Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to have y'all here. I hope that song got you going. Uh, Apparently, you need to be warned that I dance at the beginning of these things, so you've been warned if this is your first one. I'm Jackie Payne. I'm the Executive Director and founder of Galvanize USA, Galvanize Action, and the One for All Committee. I am so delighted to have y'all here. We have a couple new folks who are joining us today. So let me just begin with a tiny reminder and introduction. I started Galvanize USA and Galvanize Action 5 years ago in direct response to rising white nationalism and authoritarianism. And the goal was to fill a critical gap in the movement, to find, connect with, and move moderate women to reliably use their power to help protect our democracy and advance progress across issues. Today, we're going to share some of our latest research insights. I'm so excited to have Gretchen Barton with us today. We're going to show how we're applying some of these insights into our work, including in Ohio, where we are just weeks away from the abortion ballot being voted on. And then we're going to introduce you to our coolest new program, which I am super excited about. Now, these calls are not normally a hard push for donations, but I do want you to know we are super fortunate to have a donor with us today who has offered to match any donations that come in the next 24 hours up to $25,000. So if you have yet to renew your support this year, or if you're new and you feel inspired, know that giving today will mean your money is doubled. So I really hope that you'll act today if it's time to renew, okay? Let's do a quick couple slides that just lay the foundation. So as our long-term supporters know, research informs every single one of our strategies, every step of the way. Over the last 5 years, our unique approach, working at the intersection of data science, neuroscience, and behavioral psychology, has proven extremely effective. Last year, we received that award for the 7-month in-field randomized control trial in which we were able to return unprecedented persuasion effects. And that has been held up as a model for the movement to follow. So after 5 years of learning and trying, we have really proven that we are able to create the change we want to see in the world. So super exciting moment for us at Galvanize. The key to our success is really understanding our audience and engaging with them on an ongoing basis. We talk with them about the issues that matter to them using their value frames, and we don't focus on just a single issue, and we don't wait just to the last minute to talk to them. This is an ongoing relationship. To build on our past success and to grow that impact, we are constantly deepening our understanding. So every cycle we go through and analyze the data and figure out which are the psychographic traits that are most predictive of our audience's civic engagement. And then we dig in to understand more about those traits. We just completed several months of new research to understand moderate women's identity, their perceptions of the world, and how that influences their civic engagement. We're doing this work now in 2023, so we can use these insights to develop effective persuasion messaging and programming over the next year and a half. The depth of this understanding is what makes our approach so unique, and it's why it's so effective and cost efficient. So I'm delighted to be here today to share it with you because it's also fascinating, and we learn so much, and we want to pause and make sure that you're getting to learn along with us. It's really it's a blessing to be able to learn this about our fellow citizens and try to figure out how to connect with and move them. So on this next slide, I just want to remind everyone, why do we focus on white women in this research? And that's because white women have disproportionate power to influence the future of our democracy and our country. They are the largest voting bloc in the country and in battleground states. If you watched the debate last night, you know that white women are being targeted with grievance-based politics designed to divide us, and many are susceptible to those arguments. They also make up the bulk of the universe of people who are not yet entrenched in their beliefs. Millions of white women are open to our messages, which offer another way to look at the world, to connect with their values, and advance their own interests while also making this country work better for everybody. So there's a huge opportunity here. While our partners are working to mobilize and persuade voters of color and to address some of the structural barriers our democracy has, we fill this critical gap in the movement, connecting with and moving ideologically moderate white women to help us join in and build a durable multiracial democracy that will make this country work better for everybody. So that's the why behind this research. And as we dig in, I want that if you're asking yourself, well, we're only talking about white folks, that's why, okay? On this next slide, you're just gonna, this is a quick reminder of the work we did in the past to identify with the data science, which are the segments of women we're looking at. So as you remember, once we look and figure out what are the key traits that are most highly correlated with white women's civic engagement and their political behavior, those traits are things like levels of internalized sexism, levels of racial resentment. Once we identified those traits, then we can map folks and then move our voters into clusters, right? We take the clusters of folks who are most entrenched at the edges, and we remove them. They're not open, they're not interested in talking to us and reflecting. We move those folks to the side. They know what they think and they're not moving. There is a whole segment, 3 different groups of folks in the middle who are open to shifting their perspectives if we're able to connect with them on their values and taking their motivations and their barriers into account. So for each of those segments, we dig deep to learn more about them. If you joined us last quarter, we presented on phase 1 of this research with our amazing partners at Frameshift. And during that presentation, we kind of went into each of these 3 segments in depth, right? So this is an example of a real identity map that a member of the traditionalist conservative group created. When we were asking her, we were trying to figure out with her, how do you see yourself and what do you value most, right? So this map is each of those participants were able to plot for themselves what matters most to them. And what you see here in this real map is this woman saying, you know, caregiving is my priority. She is, traditionalist conservatives are caregivers who prioritize harmony within their village and their community. They very much desire harmony. They don't like conflict. They want that harmony with people who share their values. They, unlike the other 2 segments, they really feel motherhood and caregiving as innate to who they are. And when they think about social problems, then they sort of think, oh, well, what's wrong with those other parents? Why aren't they raising their kids up right? Because this is, in our village, we've got it going on, and we're really, you know, what's most important to us is motherhood and caregiving. So this is an example of a real map, and you see caretaker listed in the inner circle, which is the most core to her identity, and then you see that going out. And we'll talk a little bit more with Gretchen in a second about what motivates this group, what the threats are, and where the opportunities are. On the next slide, you're going to see the second group, that's uncertain individualists. These are our youngest persuadable audience. You'll see they also have family-oriented in the center of their map and spiritual, but notice how this woman has also put in words like go with the flow, positive, and even party on her map. If you remember when we talked about this group in the past, I referred to them as having YOLO vibes, you only live once, and we were trying to figure out where are those coming from? Why do we see some of these values around partying and other things in this group? And what we see there is, after more and more research, the UIs, uncertain individualists, have dealt with a lot of anxiety and hardship, and they're looking for relief from that pain and lots of depression, anxiety, and they're on a journey of self-discovery. So we'll talk more with Gretchen about how we connect with those folks. Finally, the last group that we're going to talk about today is the trusting liberals. This is our oldest segment of movable folks. These folks tend to have broken out of a restrictive system, like maybe they grew up in an extremely conservative or religious upbringing. Many of them have divorced from bad marriages. They are able to see and acknowledge systemic issues and the harm that causes other folks in a more clearly than the other segments do. Notice that this woman also put caregiver in her map, but it's out at the outer ring. So lots of these women are mothers. It's a part of who they are in their lives, but it's not part of their innate self. They're not as tied to that gender identity and those norms. The last thing I'll say about this group is they're very, very trusting, more supportive of government. That's why we called them trusting liberals. They have their orientation is a little bit more hopeful and trusting. So I'm going to leave it at that for now so that we can bring Gretchen into this conversation. And Gretchen Barton came in to help us out. Gretchen's at Worthy Strategies, an amazing partner, and she was part of this research project. So in the first part, Frameshift did all these individual deep dive interviews, and then we brought Gretchen in to do focus groups so we could look at, now that we know these women individually, how do they act when they're in their segment in a group with other folks? And Gretchen did focus groups with each of these segments, and she's going to share a little bit about it with us today. So Gretchen, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jackie. This was an incredible project. I mean, these women were so dynamic and interesting to speak with. And boy, did they have a lot to say about what's going on in the United States, what it's like to be a woman, going through their lives. And each of them told a really different story. But looking at them each as groups, we got a really clear picture of how they feel about their own lives and where they see the world going. One of the things that you can see here, obviously on the screen, is this question of, do you feel like you matter in America? And strikingly, when we ask this, we ask people to raise their hands or not. Only a handful across all of the groups that we did said, yes, I matter. But the way that they found ways to matter, because we do believe that this is an essential core human need, was different across the group. So for our traditionalist conservatives, they didn't feel like they mattered because they saw other groups mattering more. They saw other groups feeling more vocal, complaining more, right? Was their perception. These women are the stiff upper lippers of our segments, and they really believe in just duty and getting along. They did not want to see other people speak up. And so for them, looking at the idea of mattering, they only felt like they mattered through their taxes, which was kind of sad. They talked a lot about government and bemoaned feeling like government really was letting them down. But the fact that they were actually talking about it and saying, I wish I could go to DC. I wish I could, they could go grocery shopping with me. I wish that they could see what's going on, really spoke to how they still had hope in government. They still looked to it as a source of getting their dreams fulfilled. But they wanted to be understood. And so that group was really particular. Our uncertain individualists, as Jackie mentioned, the women that were on a journey to self-actualization, really transforming as individuals, skewing on the younger side. When they talked about mattering or not mattering, they really saw it through the lens of class. That was their primary lens. And they talked a lot about capitalism, really pushing, sticking it to them. They saw profits mattering more than people, and the people with money and power really either unaware of them or aware of them and then just not caring. So there was a deep cynicism in this group. And the exceptions were, of course, people who at times received government services and then all of a sudden went, oh, wait a second, government does care for me, or heard about government making a promise, got their hopes up, and then maybe that hope was dashed. So, one example, Taylor was a gal we spoke with, and she talked about the student loans, and how she really got excited that government might actually come through for her on the student loans. Didn't happen, and she kind of felt like, well, I guess I was right. It didn't happen. And so, speaking to these women, understanding that that's where they're at is really important. For our trusting liberals, these were in my mind the matriarchs of the group. These women sort of skewed older, and they were on fire. They loved being in a group together. I didn't even need to be there, quite frankly. They were just ready to go. They were so hungry to be heard. And it was really interesting because such a big contrast from, talking to them one-on-one, they were almost a little bit sad about things, but together they were re-energized and they had a sense of purpose. They talked a lot about like, I don't think that I really matter, but I do matter when I have purpose. I make myself matter through purpose. And they saw the world through the lens of their kids and their grandkids. And they got excited about making a difference because they saw things. Kind of think about them a little bit like Tom Brady too. They had incredible field view. They'd been through life. They saw things through their own experience, but they also saw everything that was going on. So they saw the larger system, and they really had a sense of how to impact change. But they really wanted to matter, and that was how they got there. And if we go to the next slide, we can go a little bit more into some of the specifics here.
Gretchen,
Yes.
Before we move into what they're motivated by an opportunity, I just want to do one touch on the traditionalist conservatives.
Yes.
I want to put a little finer point on what I heard in your focus groups was the feeling of lack of social significance, a feeling of social insignificance in a changing America. When you
Yes.
asked them, when they said they didn't feel like they mattered, who did they think did matter?
Ah, yeah. So not them. They thought, yeah, it's Black Lives Matter, trans folks matter. The way that they put it, and sorry, this is going to come off as blunt, but the way that they put it was, people who complain a lot, people who are loud, and that includes the LGBTQ community. This is the trans community, Black Lives Matter. And it's people unlike them. Who will keep their mouths shut and will not, complain. It's people who are complainers and, that in their words really get the attention. And so in a way they sort of felt like they had done everything right, that they were dutiful, they were taking care of their families, and then people who were maybe not doing everything right in their minds were the ones getting the attention. So they really wanted to be attended to and didn't feel attended to. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And it's interesting because and I want to move us on to the next slide, but when frame shifted the first round, we didn't hear as much of that grievance coming out. We heard more of the desire for equality and for everyone to do well. And when the folks got into a group, what I heard was a little bit more comfort in saying that grievance and that feeling like the irritation with special interest or special attention, just wanting the equality, all of us to do fine, but stop giving special treatment. So that became something for us to understand and try to work through there.
Yeah.
Is that a fair?
Absolutely, Jackie. And I mean, I think that was sort of the brilliance of this approach, getting people one-on-one, but also understanding how they were within their core communities when they felt free to just let their flag fly and be whoever they wanted to be. I think it was really important to get that insight and understand, this is how they are when they are in private and they feel safe, so that we really understand how to connect with them in a deep way and also understand what engages with them. What are their better angels and what are the things that are a little bit that are important to keep in mind. So yeah.
Right. So from there, let's move on to what did you see as what motivates each group and where did you see opportunity?
Yeah, for sure. So for traditionalist conservatives, maybe unsurprisingly because of the name traditionalist conservative, I don't know, I think Hallmark Channel when I hear traditionalist conservative, I don't know about you, but they are very motivated by their family and their kids. Jackie pointed out earlier, you saw with that young woman who, had history on one of the roles and also, caretaker, caregiver, children. That is huge to them. They want to protect the folks within their village, right? The people who are like them or they perceive within their community. They're really motivated by making things better for them, creating better opportunities for them, making sure that they're safe. And on that safety point, by the way, in regards to traditionalist conservatives, they just went out and said it. Look, they'll get involved civically. They'll get involved when they feel they are threatened. That was so distinct from the other groups, right? It wasn't like, yay, I'm going to go make an impact. It was, no, someone's coming after mine and I will get out there and I will go do X, Y, Z to make sure to do that. And it really pointed to a strategic opportunity with these women, to tap into that in-group care, that desire for, taking care of their village, making them feel safe, and then also establishing a sense of fairness. When we talked about their ideal world, they talked a lot about getting to fairness, getting to equality. And of course, that did not necessarily mean like bringing other people up. It just meant that at this moment, we all have one opportunity, that we all get the same one. So that was a distinguishing principle as well. Yeah. Um, for our uncertain individualists, those women were, and we mentioned before, they're on a journey to self-actualization. And so it really helped us to sort of think about things almost like a therapist, thinking about how they view the government, right? They talked about wanting to be acknowledged, wanting to be seen. And they wanted the same thing for their children. Some of them had kids, some of them didn't in our focus groups. They want to make sure that their family is going to be okay. They're strongly motivated by their children, current or future, and their desire as well to improve mental health, because that was a big theme for them as well. They want to help others. They want to help others, but right now they got to take care of themselves. And as I mentioned earlier, that class lens was so strong for them. When they heard about other identities, they were like, yeah, no. We can't pay our groceries. We got to focus on, we're all going through this meat grinder. We need to focus on the economics of things. So that was a really, really big thing. They wanted a sense of agency. And so also giving them an ability to feel that and reclaim that, giving them ability to make impact, really, really important. And then lastly, for our trusting liberals, they're deeply motivated by a sense of purpose and care. They really, really already care. But the thing that we found in our shared effort here was that they came alive in group settings. And that was so important to them. They were so hungry to be heard and hungry to be seen and hungry to work together. I mean, they were ready to trade phone numbers and emails and get going, and share notes about getting engaged. It made them come alive. So really the strategic opportunity for them is giving them community to engage. I'm so excited for the opportunity to do that with these folks. So
That's great. Let's one thing that I noticed in the focus groups when you were talking to the first group of uncertain individualists and you asked, do you matter? And one of the women said, the first thing that jumped into her head was Roe v. Wade, and it's hard to feel like she matters if she doesn't even
yes,
have control over her body. Um,
yes,
and so I'm thinking about abortion as and reproductive freedom as an opportunity here, because one of the things you talked a lot, after the focus groups, you talked a lot about was the importance of seeing concrete wins. What
yes.
do you think about ballot initiatives offering an opportunity, especially for UIs, to see a real opportunity to have government work for them in front of them?
Oh, I'm thrilled you mentioned that, Jackie. I think that that is so important. I mean, frankly, as the trust in government has just diminished since the 60s. We know that from other research, and it's something that shows up in research all the time. But yeah, we hear that from these folks, right? They want to see those local wins. They want to be able to, turn the key in the ignition of a car and actually hear the engine roar. And I think ballot initiatives are an incredible opportunity to get these women engaged. I mean, at all levels, they need to be able to see that their effort results in a win. And so putting something on the ballot that provides immediate impact, gives them that immediate feedback loop, especially around reproductive care, is huge. We've seen it in Kansas. We've seen it in a lot of other states, right? Women are coming out. And I want to emphasize too, and I'm glad you brought up, reproductive rights. Even traditionalist conservative women, not all of them, but there is a line for them where they go, you know what? Don't touch the birth control. Don't do this. There's a point where you're going too far. So women do care about this issue. It's really important. It's a very activating issue. The ability to see impact is a huge one.
Great. Well, I'm going to pause this there, Gretchen, and I'm going to invite you to stay on and answer questions during the Q&A at the end. Before I move on to showing how we're applying some of this to our programming, let me just give you a last second, see if there's anything else you want to share.
Yeah, no, I'm so thrilled and grateful to have been a part of this work. The work that you gals are doing at Galvanize. I know there's guys on the call too. I'm sure there are. It's so important, asking questions that no one else is asking in these unique ways, using best in class research to deeply understand these women, and then taking it and engaging them. A lot of research happens and it stays on the shelf, but then taking it and putting it into programs, putting it in action. I'm really, really excited about this Dear Grace endeavor. I think it's so brilliant. So many women feel unheard and unseen, and giving women a community to engage with and then go out and change the world is so important. So brava, and really I'm very excited to be a part of all this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And please do stay on so you can answer Q&A at the end, okay?
You got it.
Great. So now let's talk about how we're taking some of the research that we've learned this year and applying it to real life issues. So as most of you know, there is an abortion ballot initiative in Ohio. On November 7th, Ohio voters will decide on a state constitutional amendment for reproductive freedom, which says that every individual has a right to make and carry out their own reproductive decisions, including contraception, fertility treatment, continuing one's own pregnancy, miscarriage care, and abortion restrictions apply. So that's on the ballot November 7th. Galvanize USA is a member of the Our Campaign Advisory Committee, along with a number of key in-state players. So we've been in partnership with for a couple of years now in Ohio, and national players like my alma mater, Planned Parenthood Federation of America, ACLU, and major funders. In this role as an advisory committee member, we're able to support the campaign with our research, our message testing, creative, and financially. So it's been a really very positive experience working with this extraordinary team. You may know that the state has approved summary language for the ballot initiative, which is not great for the freedom side. It's being challenged in court now, so it's making the campaign a little bit more difficult. But our side has been working on defining what a yes on one means and doing a really extraordinary job of tapping into folks' values and helping them see how important it is for them to take action now to defend reproductive freedom. The opposition has been, is kind of holding its powder for the moment. They only just started running their ads. Their primary attack is a late term abortion attack. You keep hearing this. You heard it in the debate last night again, this myth that folks are having abortions to the very end of their pregnancy electively. So they're using that scare tactic. What we're expecting to see is another run of fear-based parental rights attacks, like we saw in Wisconsin and in Ohio earlier this summer. So that's kind of what is coming up on the table. The campaign, I'm so proud of the campaign. They're doing a phenomenal job. In addition to the work we're doing with them on the campaign itself, we're also using this as an opportunity to continuously, rigorously test our messages and research. We want to continue to learn what works with whom, so we can apply that in future ballot initiatives. And then also, we'll be in Ohio again next year. We want to make sure we know that electorate. So last year in our award-winning RCT, we were able to move our audience by 5 percentage points on reproductive freedom. Earlier this year, my PAC worked in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, and we, as you know, abortion was a key issue in that race. It was the future of abortion in Wisconsin will be decided by that Supreme Court nominee. And so that was a huge issue in that race. We were able to work on that race with my PAC, and we did an infield RCT there and move folks by 5.8 percentage points on reproductive freedom in Wisconsin this year. And so now we're continuing this work and testing messages like the one I'm about to show you in Ohio. So let's look at this ad we have running in this Ohio RCT.
These new abortion policies have been absolutely terrible for women. You've got women being denied abortion medication, becoming infertile because they can't get treatment for miscarriages, and publicly shamed for aborting due to medical complications. It's just not fair. These abortion policies don't know our circumstances or our reproductive needs. We need to trust women, families, and doctors with these decisions.
Okay, that's the first one that we're running in the RCT. And you can see that one, you heard fairness really clearly. Think about the values that I and Gretchen talked to you about. Fairness is a core one, and then compassion. You're stimulating empathy for women who are making these decisions, and you want to express your compassion for them. So that's the first one. This next ad you may have seen before. We took all of the reproductive freedoms ads that we've made over the last couple of years, and we tested them with a new ending to support Yes on One in Ohio. And this is the ad that tested best for women in Ohio. So let's watch this one as well.
12 weeks into my second pregnancy, I found out my baby no longer had a heartbeat. My husband and I were devastated. I ended up taking medication to complete the miscarriage instead of having a procedure. That felt like the best choice to honor my pregnancy. Being able to make that choice for myself with my doctor and loved ones was so important to me. Everyone deserves the same opportunity I had to make their own decisions about their bodies and lives.
So there again, we're meeting women where they are, no matter how they feel about abortion. Most women either have experienced miscarriage themselves or know someone who has. They have empathy and compassion for that. That's something they can imagine. They do not want anyone to go through a hard time if they're experiencing that. They're beginning to appreciate that abortion care is miscarriage management. And by tapping into that, it expands the view of what are the reasons that someone would have an abortion or need abortion care. And it evokes that compassion and in-group care. I want to take care of people around me who may need or may choose to have an abortion. So by taking this way in, we're able to move independents, rural voters, folks who don't vote, folks who are high school or less, young women by statistically significant margins to say, I want to see the right to reproductive freedom in the Ohio Constitution. So we'll be running this there as well. So stay tuned on that. You can give directly to the Ohio Our campaign if you want to support that campaign. I encourage you to do that. And we'll continue to come back to you to let you know how these ads are working in our most recent research. The other thing that's happening in a lot of these, when we're talking about reproductive freedom, the opposition knows that they cannot win on the merits. The majority of women in America want to see reproductive freedom. They believe abortion should be legal in some or all cases. And so it's increasingly hard for the opposition to win on the merits. You're seeing them emphasize late-term abortions as a way to try to do that. But mostly what we're seeing them do is move to other grounds to try to generate votes on their side. So in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, we saw them using, trying to move voters on crime instead of abortion. Anti-choice folks actually ran a crime ad, right? And then we also saw them running, trying to run ads on parental rights, so-called parental rights. We're seeing that here in Ohio as well. So in the August precursor to this ballot initiative, we saw a number of ads that were anti-LGBT, specific attack on trans youth, and using this guise of parental rights to try to stimulate that fear and threat that Gretchen talked about when she talked about how our more conservative voters are looking at the world. The thing that motivates them to action is a fear of threat for their own. So that's what's driving this parental rights attack. We have to be able to turn down the fear of threat and increase, once folks don't feel threatened, those folks don't feel threatened, then their compassion can be freed, right? Then they actually have great stores of compassion. We have to turn down the threat so we can unlock that compassion. Here's a message testing for one of the ads that we did in Wisconsin earlier this year, where we said, let's see if we can try to, in the context of education, we all know we're seeing critical race theory attacks, we're seeing anti-trans attacks, we're seeing this backlash to equity across across race and gender in education. So we've done, and you've seen our CRT ads. Here's an example of a message we did on gender equity, and it was very effective in helping folks to understand, like, what's most important is to take care of our kids, that we want to make sure that it's only fair for kids to be cared for and to feel like they belong and are included. And that's the right and compassionate thing to do. And we don't want to see government meddling in this. And that kind of message was extremely effective. And I'm going to show you, I think we have time to show you this quick ad by another one of our volunteers named Liz in Wisconsin.
It seems like common sense is hard to come by these days. It breaks my heart watching politicians meddle in our schools. My kids are grown, but I've known their teachers most of my life. I trusted them to support my kids, to let them be who they wanted to be. Parents and teachers have got this. I trust us, not politicians, to know what's best for our kids.
So that's an example of an ad that worked well in the context of the education setting. We're doing similar work in the context of reproductive freedom writ large. So the team just showed me an amazing ad that we made and it's in editing, so I can't show it to you, but it's so good. So stay tuned. You'll be getting it soon. It's one of my favorite ads that we've made yet about what is it? What are we for? What does it mean to protect our children and to stand up for our children today? And so it's beautiful, and I love it. And stay tuned for it. Sorry to do that teaser and not show it to you. But I want to move on to show you some other programming that we're doing. So what you have seen so far is how we take all this research and we apply it to our persuasion ads, whether we're trying to, in the C3 context, shift perspectives and positions on issues, or in the C4 context, talk about what we expect from government, or in my PAC context, who you should vote for. But ads aren't the only way that we apply all this research and our understanding to connect with this audience. I am super excited to introduce you to our latest venture called Dear Grace. It's an advice column that we designed for our audience with their values, their concerns, what motivates them, and what the barriers are that are holding them back from engaging in a pro-social way, all in mind. It is a phenomenal new venture. This is cultural programming that our women want. They're absorbing and they're sharing with others. We started this about 10 weeks ago. We have over 15,000 women who have subscribed already to Dear Grace. The last time I checked, we had over 750 letters asking Grace for advice on everything from how to get my husband to pick up his socks, to what do I do? I disagree with my daughter-in-law and what she's doing with my grandchildren, or I'm worried about what should I do at work, this is something I'm struggling with, etc. It's everything that is real in their lives, very focused on in-group care, that they want advice for. And as Gretchen said, folks are feeling alone and they're looking to feel seen and heard and not alone. By offering women this content about things they care about in a format that is entertaining and relatable, women are tuning in and we're getting them to think about what they think, which, as you know, is such a crucial step to building knowledge, confidence, and civic agency. So it's an amazing new program. All of the advice we're giving offers them, it's not super woke, so they're not tuning out feeling like, oh, I don't want to listen to this. And it doesn't create conflict or isn't like hardcore political, but it does talk about things like when women are struggling with childcare, why are they struggling? They're not alone in this. There are systemic reasons for it. What could be true in the world, right? When we talk about reproductive freedom, we had a woman say, like, she was pregnant. What should she do? And Dear Grace gave her a pro-choice answer, and also told her about the new laws that are in place in a lot of states that are banning and restricting her choices. And so Grace has been a friend to these folks and is helping them to see, meet them where they are, help them with concrete advice that will help them, right? But also offering ways that they can have agency and control their future and support this country. In addition to the advice column, we're also doing quizzes and other opportunities for women to reflect and share what they think. That's important. Reflection, thinking about what you think, helps you decide where you are and land your opinion. Saying where you are helps you to firm up that opinion, and seeing where other women like you are provides social proof and confidence that it's okay to take this step. Other women like you think this, right? So we're doing that across the spectrum on all kinds of issues. Here's a question we asked when we were talking about childcare in one of the columns. We asked, should we renew the American Rescue Plan and the childcare it provides? And you can see if we're able to track it across segment and what do real women say and why do they say that? Interestingly, this one uncertain individual said no. If we had just stopped there, we would have thought, oh, this UI doesn't want us to renew it. But if you go into her answer, she's like, we need to do better. We need more childcare support, right? So fascinating research. The last thing I want to touch on here before we turn to Q&A is another element of this program called In Focus, where we're giving women the opportunity to come in and talk about a hot topic in abortion. The commercials for this are great. They sort of say like 8 women, 1 hot topic, no drama. And we bring them in and we say, come on in, tonight we're going to talk about childcare, the legacy you want to leave for your grandchildren. Tonight's topic is on reproductive freedom and abortion. And we're giving women the opportunity to have that conversation in a small group. And then we're posting clips of these conversations on the website so other women can see what these 8 women thought about the topic and give them an opportunity to weigh in with their own thoughts. It's on fire. It's been amazing watching women engage, feel seen, participate, and react to one another. And we are so delighted with how great it's working that we are investing now to blow that up. We're going to try to get 100,000 women in the next several months into Dear Grace and in the InFocus programming, so that we are in long-term ongoing conversation with them headed into 2024. Okay, I'm going to pause us there and beyond, 2024 and beyond. I'm going to pause us there and see if we have any questions from the audience. Thank you for stopping the share, Allie, so we can see what folks want to talk about.
We do. First, I just want to say we have gotten our first donation towards the match. So thank you so much for that. That's very exciting. The first question we just got, Gretchen, is for you. So in response to hearing about Dear Grace and InFocus in this new program, from your perspective, how do you think this would or wouldn't resonate with the women in your focus groups?
Oh gosh, I think that this is exactly what they need, honestly. As we mentioned earlier, these women came alive in these focus groups, giving them a place to, speak safely, freely about how they're really feeling. We know that they don't feel like they matter. We know that they don't feel heard. Giving them an opportunity to say whatever they want to say, which so many of them are hungry for, to be heard and to do it in a way that, can I say the word healthy? It's a healthy engagement. I think it's such a positive, wonderful thing. People go online and these to engage. People are lonely in the United States. Giving some women a place to engage and do it in a community and do it in a way that leads them towards civic engagement and other pro-social stuff, I think it can only do good things. So I'm very excited about both of these endeavors. I think it's exactly what they need, and I can't wait to see how it goes.
Great, thanks. Jackie, got a couple of questions coming into you. I'll give you 2 that sort of go together. One is, how are you promoting Dear Grace and InFocus to people? How do they hear about it? How do they get to the Galvanize Together site? And then also, if you can touch on what are the range of topics that you're talking to women about, both in the ads and in Dear Grace?
Sure. Around how do we reach out to women through Dear Grace? We do that through acquisition ads. So we're targeting the women who we want to have in the audience. So remember that targeting where we take away folks who are entrenched and look for folks who are open and curious and want to engage. We take those groups, we target them on Facebook, on TikTok, and other social media. And those ads bring them in and say, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to subscribe to this Dear Grace advice column? Do you want to apply to be part of this InFocus group? And that's how we got the 15,000 women to subscribe so far. Then they have the opportunity to share it, so it has the opportunity to go organic and virally. Once they subscribe or give us that information, then we are able to send them the columns via text. So they get it, Dear Grace shows up on their phone, but they can also go to the Galvanize Together website, and there they can see all the back columns, they can take quizzes, they can offer their own advice, which we just asked that for the first time. And we had about 500 women write in their advice to a real question on Dear Grace. So they're looking both to get advice and to participate, right? So that's wonderful. So that's part of how Dear Grace is working. In terms of the topics that we talk about, so when we think about how we're going to connect with folks, we really have 3 buckets. The first bucket is on the economy. So much of what across our segments, what folks are worried about is how their family is going to make do. Our folks are disproportionately living in rural and small town America. They're disproportionately lower income, disproportionately non-college. Right, so they talk a lot, especially the UIs talk about struggle. So one of the things we want to do is connect with folks on the real things that they're struggling about around economy, around childcare. We actually talk about climate within the context of economy because they are very pro-climate, but they need it to be talked about in a way that connects with how it's going to address their gas bills, right? So like it has to also meet this economic need. So we did a lot around the economy. The second bucket is around culture wars. And in that, we put both reproductive freedom, which has been the subject of culture wars forever, but it is also about what do you want for yourself, for your life, right? So we talk about reproductive freedom and abortion. And that's why we're in Ohio, we're supporting that ballot initiative, and we'll be elsewhere in the future. We also talk about the other kinds of culture wars that are intentionally being used by the far right and by our opponents to polarize and divide us, right? Though the grievance-based culture wars are designed to create fear and threat. If you watched the debate last night, you saw so much fear and threat. So when we see those culture wars happening, we see people retracting and becoming less likely to act from a place of compassion for the other, right? And so what we're trying to do is reduce those culture wars, inoculate against them, and help people, as Gretchen said, act from the place of their better angels. If you're not as afraid, you have more compassion, and you're willing to think about what is the thing that will help both my family and yours. So a lot of the culture war work we do is in the backlash to equity and education, and now under the guise of parental rights, how can we address those? The final bucket is around really democracy, and that bucket holds a couple things. One of them is so many of our women describe feeling not politically knowledgeable enough. They don't feel confident in their political or civic agency. They feel so swamped by economic issues. They don't know if it matters if they vote. They're not sure if they trust that their vote will be treated legitimately, will make a difference, especially if they live in a highly gerrymandered place. So part of what we're doing is trying to connect with them and say, it does matter if you vote, and here's how, and to shore up that belief. And then the other piece of that is around linked fate. So we really do want our women to say, we can start with the place of individual care. How is this going to affect me and mine? But we tap into that compassion and we talk to them about we're in this together in this country. The democracy depends on us seeing each other. Our fates are linked. What are ways we can build up those feelings of linked fate, which reduces the feeling of othering, and othering is so responsible for our willingness to treat each other badly, to use violence against each other, and it's connected to those threats. So that's another piece of the democracy work. I know I just went really long, but I'll say in Dear Grace, we really meet them where they are. What are they most worried about? So many of the questions are about relationships and about work relationships and what should I do when I'm struggling. And economy. I am having a hard time. Can anyone help me? So that's Dear Grace is responding to those questions. And then we're looking for the ways that we can build up agency, self-esteem, knowledge, confidence, and then also tackling some of the issues that are not dissonant with those. So childcare has come up organically and is something we're really addressing with them. Reproductive freedom, how does that is happening? It's in their life. It's affecting people they love. How can we help them have knowledge, confidence, and agency around that? So I'll stop there.
Yeah, the questions are flying in, as are the donations. We're at over 3,000 towards the match, so super appreciative for folks. We have about 5 minutes left for questions. I'm going to give you a couple. One for Gretchen around, it sounds like the trusting liberals were really excited and motivated. Can you talk about ways that we might think about how to tap into that and leverage that excitement? And then Jackie, if you can talk a little bit about where you see us heading in 2024, both in terms of strategy and states.
Yes, absolutely. The trusting liberal women were so cool, and each of these groups had different priorities, although there were a lot of commonalities as well. Some of the things that made trusting liberals especially distinct was their focus on legacy, on really making sure that what they did today really impacted future generations, whether it was in their own family or beyond. And so speaking to them in those terms, understanding that they're looking to make an impact in a big way, I think it's really, really resonant. Speaking to them also in terms of community, this group was really distinct. They talked a lot about equal rights, lessening the disparities between people, making sure to address inequalities in our society, they're looking at the community and they're going, where do we have problems that we can fix? Where can we find ways to provide better access to healthcare, a just cost of living so that people can afford their groceries, not just for themselves, of course, their own experiencing their own stuff, but for everybody else. So really kind of talking to them about the larger system and how they personally can make impact. A number of them talked about finding resources to get involved and education. They were really interested in educational efforts, making sure that younger people know how to get involved, and they wanted to be a part of educating the community. And then they did want to get to safety. This is a larger trend that we're sort of seeing, but they wanted to find ways to protect others, to keep others safe. And so speaking to them through that language, we think is really resonant as well. But yeah, Trusting Liberals, great group to engage with. They're ready to go.
And I'll say they in our work, they tend to be UIs, and Trusting Liberals tend to be the majority of the folks that we see opportunity with. If you look in any particular state that we're working in, they tend to be the bigger segments. In Ohio, we have more of the TCs. I was just thinking when you were talking, Gretchen, about how the TLs, that older segment, about 70% of them voted for Biden, about 15% for Trump, and 15% didn't vote. And so we think part of what we're doing is understanding, like, how do they make sense of their votes? Why would they choose who they choose, right? And this is a C3 and a C4 call. On November 2nd, we'll talk about what my PAC does and the more political stuff. But part of what we're doing is understanding how they make sense of that and what are their barriers. So you mentioned fear, or you mentioned safety, and they want safety writ large. But they also, one of the things, I'm trying to remember if this is in your research or when we did it with Frameshift, do you remember the person who said, like, I'm glad I'm going to be dead? Because she was talking about how, like, it's all the conflict and the fighting. And she was like, whoa, I'm just glad this isn't my problem anymore. I'm almost out of here. And part of what we do see is that for some of them, are feeling like things have gotten bananas. I don't know, that part.
Yeah, I do remember that part. And that was in the interviews for sure. That was what was so interesting too, right? Moving them from sort of a despondency as an individual to a sense of opportunity in a group, and really kind of getting them oriented towards the future. When they saw each other, they saw, oh, wait a second. We see some shared problems, but we also see some power women around us, and we can make a difference. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you. So empowering, bringing together, creating opportunity, and real concrete things they can do now. Kelly, I know you asked me a question. I can't remember what it was.
It was, can you talk about where you're heading in 2024?
Oh, sure. So on that point, let me just say that I hope you are signed up for the November 2nd event. That is our next one, where we're going to talk with the C4, which is our more political side, and our PAC, my PAC, which does IEs for candidates. So please do join us on November 2nd. We'll put that in the link as well. And actually, if we can pull up the slide, I want to show what we're doing next. So we're trying to connect with 4 million women in starting in the Midwest, and then we expand outwards. We're starting now to reach out with all of these ads and the Dear Grace programming. The goal is to connect with at least 4 million women this year, and then we're going to increase that in 2024 by some portion, depending on the funding we bring in. The idea is to be connecting with them on an ongoing basis on all of these issues: economy, culture war, either positively to motivate them on repro or to inoculate against this threats, attacks of those culture wars, and to make sure they know it matters if they vote and their vote will count, and we need them to show up, right? So that's the way we're talking with them across the 3 buckets, at least 4 million women in those states. That for this year, and part of the reason I am asking for you to really think about giving now when we have this match, is we still have another $400K that we have to raise for Galvanize USA. And that money will help us to do these ads on TikTok and Facebook to get more women in, to try to have them join us and be in relationship with them now before it gets noisy in the future. And then for Galvanize Action, we have about 900,000 we're still trying to raise this year. And the reason why that price tag is so high is we are trying to do the same kind of research in 2024 that we did last year in 2022. So you remember I told you we got that award for having unprecedented persuasion effect, and it was a model for the field. That comes with a price tag, and we need to raise the money now to secure the vendors to do the research so we can test and prove what we're doing works, and adjust our programming and our ads next year accordingly. So that's what we're trying to raise now. And we will be in the Midwestern states, of course. We're in Michigan, we're in Wisconsin, we're in Pennsylvania, we're in Ohio. That's the Rust Belt is where I'm from. It's where our people are. It's where the majority of folks we can connect with are in those states where we have the most opportunity. And then we're expanding out. With Dear Grace, we hope to go nationwide if we can raise the money to do that. And then with Galvanize Action, and then you'll hear on November 2nd where my PAC said it, we'll be looking at other relevant states for 2024. So let me tell you more about that on November 2nd. And so here is the invitation for that. Oh, and this slide reminds me, we're working really hard making these messages, and we test everything. And seeing how women are responding to Dear Grace and giving us their thoughts on Dear Grace, our team had an idea. If you want to make a message, you've heard what, you just got some research training here. You know what's going on with these women, what motivates them. If you want to try writing a message, send it in, join our Instagram and send it in. And we're going to take a collection of your messages and test them as well. Because, we are smarter and better together. So please feel free to offer your own thoughts. And when you do so, just remember, you are not trying to persuade people to think the way you think or share your values. You're trying to understand where are they coming from, what do they value, and how can we meet them at those values and say, I hear you, you're worried about your kid. Let's talk about what would help your kid be safe and this kid be safe, right? So really think about meeting them where they are. I would love, beyond measure, I would love it if one of your messages became an ad. So I know we have 3 minutes left, so I'm gonna see if anyone else has a final question or two for Gretchen and me.
Great. One last question. Who answers Dear Grace?
Well, we have a brilliant little team here. It's a combination of folks. Our Kathleen Kelso runs up that program. She's the director of that program. She works with a number of folks. We have some creative folks who help us on that team. We have a social worker who does the In Focus, and she helps us think about it. I throw my 2 cents in there from time to time. And really what we're doing is bringing in all of the research and knowledge we have as a team to those answers. So they're not just like a single person saying, you know what I think she should do. They're saying, oh, I know that this question, what's underneath this question is a feeling of some internalized sexism. Like, how do I deal with this problem? That's a challenge. What do we know about neuroscience and behavioral psych about how to help someone address that challenge? If we're hearing grievance, what is the way in? What's the language we can use to dial that down? So everything that's being written is being written taking in all of that research, and even the language used in our qualitative gets reflected back, so that we can meet people with genuine resonance. And one of the things that Kathleen does that I just love is every single one of those Dear Grace has a link or some concrete advice. If someone is writing in, they are getting help. And I love that because we need each other, right? We need help. We need to not only feel seen, but be seen and get some concrete help. So I think that's why it's working so well, that it's both something you can enjoy and be like, ooh, what are they going to say this time, right? It has that kind of ooh factor, but also people walk away feeling like, yeah, that was helpful. And Kathleen often says, did Grace get it right? Do you agree with what we said here? And that helps us see, do people agree? And if they disagree, why? And do we have a blind spot? Or, what's the work we have left to do? So it's a team effort, but I want to definitely shout out Kathleen for her leadership on that. Okay, I'm told we're very close to the end. We want to respect your time. If you haven't given to us yet, I am just going to say it. This work is, I'm glad you love it. I see the chats. It costs money and I need you. And I really want to thank our donor for offering the match. And I hope if you haven't renewed yet, you do so today. If you're new to us, this is your moment. And if you have given, maybe you have a little extra change on the couch. Don't save it. This is your moment. Let's use it. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We're grateful to be in community with you. And I hope I see you on November 2nd. Okay.